over the range of my life, I've had the opportunity to know three wise old men. Father Thomas Berry, Bob Powell Sr., and Joseph Wesley Matthews. For the last couple of years, Thomas's voice has been the loudest, though if you knew what to listen for, you would have heard the other ones also. This year, I want to give Joe a bit of a voice. So the first reading today is from Joseph Wesley Matthews. He was the founder of the Institute of Cultural Affairs. What we have come up with in our day is a dynamical sociality. In every social situation, in business and production, this new understanding is manifesting itself. No longer is society understood substantially. In natural sciences of the world today, nobody ever saw or will see an atom. The reality is the relationship, not the entity. Similarly, in the social sciences, there is no substance called management, or a substance called stockholders, or a substance called labor. The reality in business is not a labor force, nor a capital force, nor a managerial force. The reality is the interrelationship of those. In society at large, we call this interrelationship the social process. We are discovering that these sociological manifestations of human sociality are dynamical. There is a complex dynamic not composed of interrelationships or social substances or entities, but a matter of happenings, dynamics, that are interrelated and interdependent. For instance, the social process as a whole is composed of three major dynamics. I didn't mention Ken Wilber, but I'm reading this next part from Ken Wilber. Rita saw this book and she said, "Oh, you're reading Ken Wilber." I said, "Well, trying to." If anybody reads 3 pages in a day, come tell me. The big three are also Sir Karl Popper's 3 worlds: objective, it; subjective, I; and cultural, we. The big three are Haberman's 3 vitality claims: objective truth, subjective sincerity, and intersubjective justness. He goes on, but all I want to say is the big three: I, we, and it. Welcome, Will. So, for the last year, we did the history of the universe and how the universe's journey is a frame of reference for understanding our individual and collective journey and situation. That's the context for this year's sermons, but this year's sermons are looking in a different direction. This year, I'm going to end up dealing with the interior, what I'm going to call the interior mansion. Now, there is 2 pieces of paper on your desk, on your chair. One is prose, and those are paragraphs, a paragraph for each month for the year. That's how I get ready, and that's how I tell the worship committee what I'm going to do. And if you don't want those subjects, then you have to tell me in advance, but otherwise that's what I'm doing. The other one is a set of triangles. Now, you can either, that set of triangles is the outline for today's sermon. You can either follow along on that set of triangles, or ignore them and come back to them later, or ignore them altogether. That's up to you. But I'm going to start over and go around and down that way on that triangle. It's going to go like that. But the point of that paper called All That Is, and the point of this sermon, is that as we have gotten into the 21st century, and as we understand ourselves in an emerging universe in which all are interrelated, and as Joe said, as we understand that we're in a dynamic situation, not a fixed reality, and as I sang in that song, which I hope somebody will try to learn, about the 14 billion year history of the universe, we are now participating in shaping tomorrow. And that's the context for the sermons for this year. And the problem we have, and the reason that I'm doing today's sermon, is that the maps that we have been given to us in the 20th century are inadequate for the 21st century. The maps are a problem. My example of a map being a problem, my friend in India, Vijay, when I went over there 3 or 4 years ago, he was telling me that he was thinking about expanding his business into Africa. I said, good. Vijay, have you ever been there? No, I've never been there, but sounds like a good market, and I think I'm going to expand my business. And I looked up on the wall, and he had a map of the world, and he was real proud of himself. He had a map of the world. But he had a Mercator projection. And you know the problem with a Mercator projection is it makes Europe look like it's half the world, and Africa looks like it's about half the size of Europe and about the size of India. Well, if you go to Africa thinking that you're going to go from north to south the same way that you're going to go from Bombay to Delhi, you're in trouble. And if you send your salesperson over to Africa and say, well, just go around and catch all the places, he's going to come back and say, Chief, I didn't do it. Why not? Look up there. It's just a little place. Why didn't you just go there, 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 and there, and there? Have you ever tried to get there? The map was wrong. So I'm trying to experiment with a new map to understand the situation that I live in. So, like when you move to Greensboro, one of the things you might do when you first move here is go get a map of Greensboro, and you could look at it. You'd know where Market Street went, and you could say, have I been to a market in Benbow? Do I know where market in Benbow is? Have I ever been there? Yeah, maybe. No. You know where you are. But today, we don't know where we are. So I built the map that's on that page. It says down at the bottom in small little print, 1999-2006. I built this map in 1999, put it on my wall. By 2006, some friends of mine helped me make some small editorial corrections which you don't understand, and I don't explain, but I made a few corrections. But this is substantially, this is a 20-year-old map that I've been following in my wandering around. And I want to help you understand where I've been wandering, so that maybe it'll make some sense to you, and then I'm going to set this as a context for the rest of the year's sermons. Now, this map purports to be a map of all that is. Everything in the universe has we, I, and it. On the big triangles, it's over here, we's over here, and I's up at the top. That's according to Wilber. It, we, and I. And my test is, does everything I encounter have we, I, and it? My easiest test is, well, does it apply to me? I think it does. Then I ask, does it apply to my dog? Well, yeah. My dog has an it. He walks around, pisses and poops and bites things. He has a we. He likes me, and he knows he has a way to relate to me. And he has an I. He has a selfhood. And when he decides he wants something, he makes an effort to get it, and he'll pull you down if you don't watch out. I mean, he exerts his I-ness. And so this is a map. So this we, I, and it thing is a description, purports to be a description of everything that is. So let's look at that. Now I'm going to talk just about that top triangle for a few minutes. I'm on time. This is the hard thing's getting this thing to wind up, I'll tell you. But I get it wound up. So everything in the universe, in the manifested universe, has an exterior dimension. That's the left-hand side. It has a social dimension, and it has a selfhood. Now, I agree that the selfhood of a tree and the selfhood of, say, Randy here, may or may are different kinds of, you got to use different measures. But there is that. So what's in the exterior dimension? The exterior dimension has, surprisingly, three aspects: energy, matter, and action. Everything is energy or matter, and those two things do something. Have you ever been near a lightning strike? This is my example of energy. Last June, Elaine and I were watching television. We were watching the end of a show that was supposed to end at 9 o'clock because we really wanted to watch the show that started at 9 o'clock. And the 8 o'clock show was just ending when, boom, flash, blang, darkness. Whoa, shit, what happened? Well, lightning. Lightning is my example of energy on the loose. Lightning, as it turned out, we discovered later, lightning hit a tree about 20 feet from my house, went down the tree, across the root, up through the ground, blew a hole in the ground like this, jumped over to my fence, split 2 fence poles, burned the fence wire, got into the house, ruined the TV, ruined the microwave, ruined Elaine's computer. It was unbelievable. Listen, energy is wild in the universe. And you better hope that you encounter the universe's energy contained in matter and with somewhat focused action. Because when the energy of the universe gets wild, so that's a helpful framework for me to say the universe, everything you look at. Yeah, you can look at Lynn, or you can look at this building, or this congregation. there is an exterior dimension. There's some energy. It does things. And there's stuff. Energy, stuff, and doing things. And you can look at that and you'll see it anywhere. And one of the interesting questions to ask yourself is, how is it in balance? And how are they relating to each other? And if I wanted the situation to grow, what would I want more of? That's the end of the sermon. Now, whenever, and I'm going to go over the social triangle. So, whenever two things manifest themselves near each other and establish a relationship, there has to be some kind of social dynamic going on between them. And that has to do with order, justice, and welfare. That if you look on the little thing, those are the words that are there. I think that I got them right. Order, justice, and welfare. That's right. In the social dimension, down there, there's a social dimension. And every time two things come together, there's an economic dimension. That is to say, there's some resources that are brought into the relationship, and those have to get adjusted between each other, and they have to get distributed around. Maybe I'll trade a little bit of what I got for a little bit of what you got. And it has to be fair. And then there has to be some cultural understandings. We have to understand how we're relating to each other. My example of cultural understandings is, like in this group, there's cultural understandings. If you're sitting in this room, if you come to church on Sunday morning, if you get here early, and you come in here, the cultural understanding is you be quiet. And there are people who will help you remember that being in here, you be quiet. If you want to talk, you stand out there and talk. And almost every Sunday when I come here, I hug Betsy. Now, that's not sexual harassment. You know? I'm not being unfaithful to my wife. That's how Betsy and I greet each other. We have a cultural understanding, and most people here are aware that that's a viable cultural understanding. I have not exceeded the norms. I don't go around. Anyway, but the point is, whenever a group of people come together, they have to have these dynamics. They have to have some resources. They have to have some dimension of decision-making and political thing. And they have to have some cultural understanding. Not have to have, do have. They have cultural understandings. And this is a true statement about this congregation, this country. It's true about me and my dog. My dog has learned who to jump up on. He knows on me, he can jump up. On Elaine, he doesn't jump up. Now, this is a cultural understanding, in my opinion. He doesn't jump up on her very much. Almost always. I catch him on my leg, and he goes, yeah. It's okay. It's a cultural understanding. These are important for relationships. So, we can use this map, as it were, of the social dimension for understanding our groups. Do we have a common culture? Like here, one of the things, it's a bit of an issue, especially for new people like Ryan, who doesn't know that we're going to sing hymn number 123 after a period of silence, and all the rest of us here have it memorized. Nobody's going to open their hymn book, and he's going to feel left out. That's a bit of a problem, but we apologize. And whoever else doesn't know, I wasn't trying to pick on anybody. So, the point is, this is a map, and we need to understand that whenever you're talking about manifested reality, anywhere on the planet, you will have resources, you will have a social dimension, and then thirdly, there's an interior dimension. This is the I-ness. Now, And that has three parts, because this diagram is set up to run in threes. You can argue about theoretics about the universe, but it has three also. And one I call the interior. So the interior dimension, there's the solitary, there's the corporate, and there's what's at the top called the transparent. I should have gotten those right. I just about memorized this. That's what it says, right? Okay, good. So now, in my interior, and I'm going to go through these more. This is the dimension that I want to work on all year. But I want to talk about the solitary dimension of the interior. What this is the self taking care of the self. What do I do that allows me to be a self so that I can participate in the social dimension and relate to the exterior dimension? Those are the skills that it takes to be a self. And you know people who don't have much of a interior dimension, and they're always frantic whenever the exterior moves on them. They don't know what to do. Well, no, I know what to do. So that's the interior and this is where I work with myself on what am I going to do. This is how I become a self in history. The corporate skills are the skills that allow the self to participate in the social order. These are important because I'm a self, but there's no way that any individual, thing, or otherwise can exist unconnected to the rest of the universe. I'll not say this very many more times, but the Unitarian Universalist seventh principle is the interconnected web of life. The interconnected web of life is real. You are connected, whether you're conscious of that or not. And the corporate part of the interior dimension is how the individual prepares itself for relating to the larger whole. But that's an interior thing. And it's not the same as the cultural part of the social process triangle, religion. Those are slightly different. I'll come back to that in a minute with a bit of luck. And then finally, the top pole of that interior triangle is the transparent dimension. This is how the individual prepares itself and manages its relationship to the radical other that's present in the universe. There is, in addition to you and you and you and you and you, in addition to all this, there is the radically uncontrollable. There is the radical presence. There is the unknown unknown. What you can call it, there's a lot of names. There's a wildness. Whether you like it or not, it's there and it'll get you. And those transparent dimension is where you prepare for dealing with that. Now, that's the top, that's that big triangle. And my claim is that those dynamics describe everything in the universe, from the books on the shelf to my dog to you and the congregation and the United States and the world and Mars, whatever. Now, however, that is not a complete description of reality. There's that circle below, which I want to talk about as a realm. I used to talk about it as a dimension, but old Bob Sr. told me I can't use the word dimension in this context, so I'm talking about realm. There is a realm which I will call the Otherworld, in which the rules of this world do not apply. The triangles I'm going to call this world. And this world is measurable, understandable, documentable, and we can agree on what's there and what's not. Either Randy's sitting there or he's not. And we can have a conversation, is that really Randy? And is he really there? But at the end of the day, yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down. In the other world, that kind of conversation is not possible. It is immeasurable, and it can only be talked about metaphorically, through poetry, simile, analogy, and other kinds of stuff. And this is where religion has its biggest difficulty in the 21st century. In that, like that song we sang, Forward Through the Ages in Unbroken Line, for centuries, people have been encountering the other world. But the only way you can talk about the other world is through poetry. So they use poetry like sheep and lambs and shepherds. Well, none of you are shepherds. You don't know what a shepherd does. All you think of is, anyway. So we don't have new poetry for talking about the other world. But and I don't want to do the whole thing on the other world right now, but I want to touch on it a little bit. The other world works like this. Have you ever taken like a brown paper bag and you put a candle underneath the brown paper bag and nothing will happen for a while? And then the brown paper bag will start to turn browner. And then pretty soon the brown paper bag bursts into flame. And pretty soon the brown paper bag's on fire. Well, that's how the other world breaks in. I want to use the word breaks in to this world. Now, the other world has a kind of wildness to it. But the way I start to get at it is this. In the exterior world, when you're dealing with energy, matter, and action, what often gets called the natural world, when you're out there looking around, you're measuring this, and you're counting, and you're watching, and you're trying to predict where the hurricane's going to go, you do all this stuff, and you do it as good as you can, and you finally realize, I don't have a clue. There is a wild mystery. There's mystery. I mean, you look and you look. You're a doctor. You doctor and you study and you measure and you count, and you don't have a clue. It's a mystery. And it's not because you're a bad doctor. It's because there's mystery. And the other world has broken in, and you found it. And some people say, well, it's just a stupid doctor. Or to pick on anybody, it doesn't matter who you pick on, the meteorologist, the doctor. I don't care. My other mentor says I can't say that, but it doesn't make any difference. There's mystery, and mystery most often breaks in when you're looking into the natural world. Now, in the social dimension, take Mankoff over here. Mankoff is a good man, and he wants to do well in the social dimension. And then he finds out, dang, there's people over there that are hungry. So what happens? Well, he can say, well, we got a political problem and we'll elect a new mayor. Or he can say, I care, and he'd get up on Saturday morning and go organize pancakes and sausages. Now, doing pancakes and sausages on Saturday morning does not make economic sense, does not make political sense, but it makes care sense. And care is what breaks through the social dimension, and then the rules of the social dimension somewhat cease to apply. When the other world breaks through, the normal rules don't really apply, especially if you're living in the other world, if you catch on to the other world. Now, the third dimension that breaks through is yourself. If you sit long enough, I don't know how, have any of you ever tried to sit perfectly still for, say, an hour, for 45 minutes? I mean, it's harder than you think. You will find elements of selfhood that you didn't know were elements of selfhood. Sitting still long enough, and that's part of, Betsy's wonderful on this, because she does this, David said to me, how are we going to know when to start Spirit of Life? I say, that's Betsy's department. Betsy knows about sitting in the silence. And she's not worried about it. The rest of you, I know, oh, geez, I hope this starts very quickly. What happens in the individual, in the interior, is if you start focusing on the interior long enough, if you sit and just listen and listen and listen and look and look and look and listen and look and listen and look, pretty soon a kind of consciousness breaks through. That's the only word I know to. It's not smarts. It's not smarts. It's something else. Consciousness breaks through. Now, the most amazing thing is once you sort of start to live in the other world and you find yourself, okay, I can handle care, I can live in care, I can live in consciousness of self and other, and mystery doesn't bother me. Once you start to go, whoa, it's okay, I got it, then the bottom falls out of that. And when the bottom falls out of that, you come to tranquility. And in the scriptures, in the Christian scriptures, the word peace that passes understanding. This is the peace that passes understanding. This is what we don't know, but this is a kind of tranquility that you can't buy. This is not economic security. This is not a Wall Street going up or down problem. This is something totally other. And the only word I know is tranquility. This gives you a kind of interior peace that cannot be shaken. Now, when that happens, you have a chance to understand that the whole universe is one, and that you're a part of it, and there is no boundary hither or yon. That doesn't happen very often. That's not an intellectual problem. You will never figure that out by reading all the books and doing all the calculations and studying from all the gurus. But if you're lucky, and the other world, and you allow the other world to break through and let it keep breaking through, you will see that all is one. And that is the final reality. So this is a map. I hope you find it useful. You can ask yourself where you are, where you've been, where you want to go, but that's the point of this. This is my map. I've been to most of these places, and I've found them more or less enjoyable. Not always. And I hope we have a chance to continue to explore these together. That's the purpose of the rest of the sermons. Thank you for listening.